Hello everyone, DonTheCrown here with some updated information about the Spiritborn. So we have the PTR coming up here on Wednesday, and because of that, there's been a whole bunch of information that WoWHead's been managed to go through and find in the Datamined. So I've gone here to the Diablo 4 PTR section. I've gone here to make sure it added in build 2.01, and just looking at Spiritborn specific stuff like uniques, and there's a lot of really cool stuff in here. Now there's a lot of stuff that we've already seen but with like different names. So in the capture event that a lot of content creators got brought out to, basically had a build where they had like every single unique rings basically had a name to it. So like gorilla centipede or like eagle jaguar and stuff. Now all of those rings have names. They have a little bit updated values to them, and there are more uniques than we got to see before. We didn't get to find all of the unique rings. We definitely didn't get to find all the unique stuff. And so we get to see some really, really cool stuff in here. So I'm going to go through them real quick for you and kind of talk a little bit about how I think some of these are going to be used in different builds. And pretty much to me, a lot of these uniques seem to be really cool. Very, very maybe overtuned at first glance for some of them. But yeah, pretty excited. So first off, this is one of the ones that we've already kind of talked about quite a bit. Been a lot of theory crafting around this one. So this is the Harmony of Ebewaka, and this has all stats, damage, crit strike chance, damage reduction, and all of your skills are additionally Jaguar, Eagle, Gorilla, or Centipede skills based on your secondary Spirit Hall choice, and each spirit type a skill has increases its damage by 10 to 50%. So if you don't know, if you go to Spiritborn, you basically get to pick a primary spirit, which will make all of your skills that spirit. So like Jaguar, for example, now makes all the skills Jaguar. And then normally the secondary spirit does not apply the same effect. But with this hat on, it's going to make it so that not only will it apply the primary, now everything's Jaguar, but now everything is like Eagle or Gorilla or something. And ideally with this hat, you want to make it so that if you are picking Jaguar for your primary, let's say Eagle for your secondary, you're using Gorilla or Centipede skill to do damage. And that's because you basically are going to just be able to get all three things there up to 150% increased damage, which is pretty strong. And also there's quite a bit of benefits in the passive skill tree for being different skills. So for example, Gorilla skills deal 5% increased damage to knock down enemies and have a chance to execute them if they're not a boss. There's also casting a Gorilla skill gives you 5% of your maximum life, which is pretty ridiculously strong as well. We also have increased damage with Centipede skills, and that's doubled versus healthy monsters. Centipede skills also deal increased damage to crowd controlled enemies. It's pretty easy to crowd control in this game, and they gain increased crowd control durations. We also have hitting enemies with Jaguar skills increases the damage they take from you up to 10% when you hit them 100 times. So this definitely is something that will scale against bosses pretty darn hard. And so there's just like a ton of stuff here that is pretty cool to kind of splash around. Honestly, I've gone through and thought up a whole bunch of different builds with this particular one, and it really does seem like the type of thing where you're gonna like make a lot of decisions about like which exact skills you want to use, which multipliers, which spirit halls. And this is like a really big unique that is not just like for one build, but probably is going to empower like a whole ton of different builds. And it's going to be really fun to see like how this plays out, what's popular season to season. I definitely have a feeling because of this hat, it's gonna be pretty difficult for us to actually like pinpoint what best build is anytime soon. There's gonna be a lot of build discovery, especially in season 6, as people are just messing around with all of the uniques and mixing and matching everything around. We're gonna find some really, really cool builds. Now, this hat is all about spreading out your spirit hall choices. So like you're trying to get all three spirits going at the same time. And there's maybe a way to get a fourth spirit, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. But there is also the reverse helmet. So the reverse helmet is Loyalty's Mantle. So it has all of the base stats that are the same, all stats, damage, crit strike chance, and damage reduction. But this one makes it so that when your spirit hall choices match, those bonuses are increased by 100%. and skills with that base spirit cost 60% less and have up to 60% reduced cooldowns. So this hat almost by itself is just going to cooldown cap you for skills of the same spirit, reduces the cost of those skills by a ton as well, and it just seems really ridiculous. And there's definitely some cool things that you can do with this. And so if we go and look at our spirit halls real quick, things like getting, Jaguar basically right now is doubling your damage. This will now be tripling your damage instead. And you're able to go here and temper onto your weapon. Oh, that's not your weapon. Onto your weapon, you can increase your primary spirit hall potency by 70%, and you'll be able to masterwork that up as well. So you could potentially get a even bigger boost from the spirit hall. But the one that I'm probably the most interested in is probably Gorilla, where you're getting more of your thorns damage and a bigger barrier, up to 40%. Or Centipede. Now Centipede at first glance doesn't really seem to be all that good. So hitting an enemy with a Centipede skill reduces their damage by 2.5% and slows them by 10% for 3 seconds, stacking up to a maximum of 8 times. So that means basically 5 times 4 is 20%. And so if we double that, that is going to be 40% damage reduction. But then on top of that, we can throw the primary Centipede Hall potency on here, and we can like triple masterwork this. And I believe you're going to be getting over 70% damage reduction for hitting enemies with any skill at all in your build. And so we might see a build where something like going and using Soar to auto cast Vortex with these boots that we'll talk about here in a second that we've already seen, the Soar Evade boots. So Soar deals increased damage and your evade is now Soar. And then you can do an aspect to make it so that whenever you use Soar, it also uses Vortex, which pulls enemies in. So be able to basically just like hop around, continuously pulling enemies to you, continuously knocking them down from having active barrier on yourself, and continuously applying vulnerable. It's going to kind of be like a ZDPS style build for grouping up. But this is definitely something that's very, very helpful for other people, because if you can manage to clump all of the enemies in the pit, or clump all of the enemies in any sort of end game content that are crowd controllable, and allow people to just sit there and nuke them because you're reducing the amount of damage they do by 20%. And that's not really all, because you can also use Withering Fist here to make them deal 20% less damage as well. So there's quite a bit of DR that you can give your whole party. And I think this is a pretty cool idea that this kind of enables a ZDPS playstyle. Also enables like a Thorns playstyle, or even like a Jaguar playstyle. Even Eagle could potentially use this. But this is like probably the first thing I really saw that was like, could be really neat and very different than anything we've seen so far. Next up, we have the Rod of Kepeleke, or the Rod of Kekekek, I guess. I think it's laughing at us or something. And basically, we're going to get maximum vigor per second, ranks to core skills up to 8 ranks. That's up to 12 ranks to core skills when it's GA'd. We're going to get critical strike chance. And then now your core skills are now additionally basic skills. They're free to cast and deal up to 30% less damage based on their cost. At maximum vigor, your core skills instead deal normal damage and consume all vigor to critically strike with 30% increased critical strike damage for each point spent. So if you have 100 vigor baseline, that's going to be 300% more damage, which is pretty insane. Absolutely bonkers amounts of damage. Now, when I first looked at this, my first thought right off the bat was to go and make Crushing Hand just absolutely slap. Because Crushing Hand has this aspect here where every third consecutive Crushing Hand smashes an additional 10 times around you, dealing 25 to 40% of its base damage. And so it's normally kind of like a smash on both sides of you, but then you like smash everywhere. And so especially against big bosses, this is going to do a ton of damage. Also, we have this thing called Prodigy's Tempo, So every third consecutive cast of the same basic skill increases all ranks of skills by 2 for 5 seconds. But then as well, every third consecutive cast of the same core or potency skill reduces all skills active cooldowns by 10%, increased by 2% for each of their skill ranks. And yeah, I think that this could potentially be pretty good here, because this says they are now additionally basic skills. So they're going to retain their core skillness, but they're also going to be basic. So every single time you're just smashing this button, you're going to be increasing your skill ranks, which is quite a bit of damage. Also, it's going to be giving you less cooldowns, so you can spam things like your ultimates or other defensive things. And I think this is going to be absolutely ridiculous. This will probably pair up nicely with either Harmony or with Loyalty. I think either one of those hats are probably going to be in a lot of different builds, but also like finding some way to generate a ton of vigor is going to probably be rather important here. And kind of to segue into that, let's talk about some of the rings here real quick. So right now there are 6 unique rings that Spiritborn appears to be shipping with, and each of these kind of fit between 2 of the Spirit Guardians. We have Jaguar and Gorilla, and then Eagle and Centipede. And so like each one's like Gorilla Jaguar, or Gorilla Centipede, or Centipede Eagle, or Eagle Jaguar. So they kind of all connect and sit between them. They originally used to have these names, but then they kind of changed them. But if you look at the picture of the ring itself, it kind of has like glowiness coming out of the face. The blue is the eagle, the white is kind of the gorilla, the yellow is the jaguar, where the green is the centipede. And it gives you an idea how it works. So all of these kind of giving you some interesting ways to generate some vigor or do some other cool stuff with it. And some of the stats on them are pretty ridiculous. So evading consumes 1 stack of resolve and generates 20 to 40 vigor. This pretty much makes it that you also have Armor Hide's passive effect, which generates that resolve. Resolve is like a stacking buff you're going to get. That's kind of like an ablative shield that makes you take less damage. This allows you to evade to get rid of those to give yourselves more vigor, which is pretty good. The next one here makes it so the maximum vigor is increased by 50%, and every kill gives you more. And then while you have any ferocity at all, your poisonings now deal their damage in 30% of their normal duration. Now, other stuff on here that's pretty ridiculous is there's like 45% cooldown reduction. So that's quite a bit. Also 24% resource generation. There's life on kill, nourishment. Yeah, there's quite a bit of stuff on these rings. Some of them are maybe a little bit ridiculous. I don't know if these numbers are actually correct. And like I said, these are all data mined, so we don't really know if they are 100% correct yet. Also, I'm going to be putting all of this on my Spiritborn document, which I'll link down in the description down below. Next up, Peacemonger Signet has dodge chance, has damage for 4 seconds after killing an elite, has perseverance and fueled. And then, so perseverance and fueled. Look at these real quick. So fueled is gain increased life on kill equal to your maximum life when you have at least 4 stacks. And then perseverance is 1% DR per stack of resolve we have. And so just giving you more ranks of that. And we generate 7 vigor per second while we have at least 4 stacks of ferocity. And then whenever you gain ferocity, you also gain resolve. And so this allows you to have an easy way of just generating a ton of resolve, because generating ferocity is generally pretty easy. There's a lot of different skills that give it to you on like core skill, on basic skill, on ultimate that gives it to you. And so this would give you a way to also generate resolve very, very quickly, being a very good defensive ring. Next up, we have the Ring of the Midnight Sun. And this is all about crit. And this one seems really freaking ridiculous. Gives us a bunch of damage to elites, attack speed, mirage, critical strike damage, but then your critical strikes restore 30% of the vigor you have spent in the last 2 seconds, increased by your critical strike damage bonus. And then you get the counterattack passive effect, which is like 20% base dodge, which is absolutely insane. Because if you cast 3 spenders, like you're just going to be able to basically go infinite with your vigor here very, very easily, especially because this is increased by your critical strike damage bonus. Very, very easy to just constantly blast Vigor out. This could basically just solve all of your issues. Probably going to be absolutely insane for leveling, especially if you have a decent critical strike chance. So pretty excited about this one. And this is like the Jaguar Eagle Ring. Next up, we have the Centipede Eagle Ring, which gives you critical strike chance, gives you movement speed, gives you a chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. That's a pretty high chance of 47%. Unrestrained, which I think makes so you do less or do more damage when you're unrestrained. And then every 10 seconds, a pestilent swarm spawns from you, which deals poison damage on hit. But the big thing here is that pestilent swarms now always spawn orbiting around you and generate 1 vigor per hit. There's a lot of centipede stuff that generates these little pestilent swarms, little like bugs that fly around, and normally they kind of like go off and do their own things. But I think we saw these in some of the footage for Spiritborn, and they're gonna like loop around you, kind of like ball lightning now, and just be absolute menaces. They're gonna generate vigor for you and do a ton of damage. Last but not least is the Centipede Gorilla Ring. It's gonna give you up to 48% total armor. Quite a bit. I think with like just this ring, you're pretty much going to solve your armor, even in Torment 4, because there's kind of significant penalties, it appears, for going into Torment 4. It's also going to give you a bunch of thorns, gives you Patient Guard, gives you damage reduction from poison enemies, which is a pretty solid DR source, like 24% on a ring, going up to like 30-40% with like masterworking and stuff. Pretty insane. You're also going to get vigor back every time you deal thorns damage, and you get Toxic Skin's passive effect, which I think just poisons enemies that hit you. Overall, a pretty solid ring. And that's all 6 of the rings that we have right now. I don't believe there's going to be any more of them, but who knows. So next, so that was, we talked a little bit about Rod of Kepeleke, and we have like basically a ways to get vigor for this. Now let's talk about the basic attack staff. So this is Sepazontec, and we kind of saw this in the preview before. Basically, this makes it so that your basic skills do more damage. They always use their third attack. So Spiritborns have a special thing where the like third attack of their basics do something special. And this makes it so that you're always using that third attack. And then every third cast unleashes triple strikes and follow through 6% increased damage with basic skills, or excuse me, 60%. So it's 10% per stack. And this is doubled for third attacks. Every single one's going to be a third attack. So this is basically 120% damage for follow through. And of course, you get even more ranks with greater aspects and masterworking. So it's going to be pretty insane. It has cooldown reduction. And the thing I think is pretty neat, if you look at the basic skills here, there's a lot of interesting things. So Rock Splitter, for example, makes it so your third attack strikes enemies around you, doing more damage. This one makes it so that it knocks enemies back and grants resolve per enemy hit. This one makes it so your third attack does more thorns damage. So you can maybe do a ton more thorns damage with this. This one makes it so Thunder Spike strikes back again, pulling in and knocking down distant enemies. This one makes it so that when you evade, you attack with Thunder Spike along the way and make enemies vulnerable, which is kind of neat because Thunder Spike itself, your third attack, does more damage and reduces your evade cooldown by 5 seconds. Now, if you read this, it does not state that hitting with this causes your evade to have its reduced cooldown. So with Sepazontec, I would assume that you would be able to just hit and evade. It would automatically attack with Thunder Spike, reduce the cooldown of your evade by 5 seconds, probably allowing you just to evade again. And so you could potentially just go infinite evading, and made a build about this on Mobalytics already called the Eagle Evader. We're basically just going to be flying around evading nonstop and striking with Thunder Spike. And it could be a pretty cool basic attack skill where you're using evade as your damage button. Thrash makes it so that your third attack unleashes a series of rapid slashes around your target. So you can be more AoE. You also get Ferocity, or it's going to continue to hit with that third attack if you just keep spamming the button. So you just keep spamming it out. Withering Fist makes it so that the third attack bursts around the enemies. You can also make it so that it spreads poison and vulnerable as well. So I think Sepazontec is going to be really, really neat. A lot of really cool basic attack builds with this. There's also a pretty neat aspect that is all about using basic skills that is available only to the Spiritborn, called Combined Strikes. So each different basic skill you cast increases all of your damage by up to 25% for 10 seconds. So you get 4 basic skills. So it's 100% increased damage for 10 seconds. Kind of gonna be a little bit of pain in the butt though if you're having to like juggle using 4 skills every 10 seconds, just because they don't have cooldowns to kind of help you out with them. But I think this would be a pretty fun build to try to like figure out which ones are going to be the best. Also, like which particular like hat would you want to wear? I would assume that Harmony would probably be better because you don't really gain a lot from loyalty because you're not getting affected by the base spirit cost reduction or the cooldowns, whereas Harmony is just giving you raw damage, which is, you know, pretty good. So next up we have a staff that's all about core. We have a staff that's all about basics, and next we have a glaive that is all about ultimates. And so this gives you a huge amount of damage to elites, a ton of damage to ultimates, vigor on kill, supremacy, critical strike chance, and supremacy real quick is the one down here that makes it so that any enemies you kill while an ultimate skill is active grants you a stack of supremacy, increasing your damage by 1% up to 10%. When the ultimate skill ends, you gain 5 stacks of supremacy, but you lose 1 per second. So I believe if you just put a whole ton of points into that, that means that basically casting an ultimate is just going to give you, I think 5 stacks of this. Let me just put the points in real quick. Oh, actually we're getting 15 stacks of supremacy. So if you're able to spam your ultimate, like by using the Seeker or something, you'll be able to get up to that 30% pretty quickly. And this particular thing is going to give you 6 more ranks of that. So yeah, like 90%, maybe over 100% more damage from supremacy alone, which is, you know, pretty insane. This more than covers up for not having an aspect on your two-hander. And then on top of that, casting an ultimate skill grants you its matching primary spirit hall bonus and increases all skill ranks by up to 10 for 15 seconds. So remember we talked a little bit earlier about Harmony. You can now get all 4 aspects or all 4 spirit hall choices. So you can get a 200% damage bonus if you use Harmony and Wūshe Nak Pa together, which seems pretty nuts, plus an additional 10 skill ranks here, which, you know, seems pretty insane. And then on top of that, the Seeker is now a focus skill, the Hunter is a mobility skill, the Devourer is a potency skill, and the Protector is a defensive skill. And there's stuff in the passive tree for all of those to help you out. But I think that combined, this is going to be a very strong combination. I think that potentially this combination is maybe even too good. It almost feels like a set together where you just end up using both of these, and it really does encourage you to use ultimates. We'll have to see. I'm excited to actually have ultimates be worthwhile using. So pretty excited about this, especially because like stuff like the Seeker, it only has a 30-second cooldown on it. And if you put, you know, it's gonna have 5 skill ranks into it, so you'll be able to, you know, reduce the cooldown, I believe, as well, because now you're able to put ranks into the Seeker, and this knocks down enemies when it hits them for 4 seconds, a 4-second crowd control. And then you also, the second hit is guaranteed crit, and it makes all enemies vulnerable, so you're pretty much covering most of your bases there. You could also go with something like the Hunter, which has a longer cooldown, but has some chances to kind of reset its cooldown. Even the Devourer, all of these I think you can possibly keep up all of the time with the right setup. But then things like casting your ultimate skill gives you unstoppable for 3 seconds. You can also have like casting an ultimate skill, your last potency, defensive, or focus skill, cast prior, becomes free to cast for 3 seconds. Now I might know what you're thinking here is, well, I'm just going to go and cast the Seeker, and then Intricacy is going to let me cast the Seeker again infinitely, right? Well, in the playtest, I actually did use the Seeker ultimate, and it did appear that you were not able to put down more than 1 ultimate at a time, because this has charges on it, and it was just a grayed out button while the eagle was active on the screen. I'm not sure if it's active for 3 seconds. If it's not active for 3 seconds, then you'll be able to probably just chain it infinitely. which would be pretty interesting. But we'll have to see how that works out. I definitely don't think that you're going to be able to flood the screen with like infinite devourers or anything like that, or the hunters or protectors, just from like a performance standpoint. I don't think that they would let you do that, but who knows, man? Who knows? Next up, we have a defensive pair of pants called the Protection of the Prime. And honestly, I don't really think that these are all that great right now for a couple of reasons, but I'll talk in a second. So first, I give damage while healthy, which is nice. Damage on pants. Life per second is kind of maybe not all that great. Maximum res is kind of cool, although Tyrion's Might does exist. You will be able to use it on a Spiritborn. You have maximum life as well. But then while moving, you gain 20% dodge chance, or after standing still for 2 seconds, you become unstoppable. So I think this is only okay. It's not super duper amazing. First off, I'm really hoping they're going to update these pants for launch, because they actually did just nerf dodge chance. Dodge chance used to be like, sources like this would be additive. So you go from like 10% dodge to 30% dodge. But now this is only going to be multiplicative. So getting 20% dodge would just be like going from 10% dodge to 12% dodge. So this number seems pretty low and small compared to what we're going to be getting, which, does feel bad. Now, the kind of giving you unstoppable when you stand still is pretty nice. If you're like fighting, you get hit by a CC, well, you're probably going to go unstoppable like in half of a second anyways, and just be able to move again, which is kind of nice. I could see maybe potentially some builds that would use this. Next up, we have an insane pair of gloves. Absolutely nutty pair of gloves. Craze of the Dead God. Gives you anti-venom, which I believe is this one right here. So you increase poison resistance. Your maximum poison resistance is increased by up to 15%. And so this is pretty much going to give you, probably max poison cap right from this, which is good because of the unique effect on it. It also gives you poison damage over time, gives you damage to poison enemies, increases your healing received. But most importantly, when you take direct damage, you instead receive 100% of it in the form of poisoning over time. So it's like you're in a spider map all of the time. But based off your poison life amount, dealing direct damage has up to 10% chance to infect the enemy with Touch of Death, which is a pretty heavy hitting focus skill, I believe. It is this one right here, potency skill. And it, at rank 1, that is 300% poisoning damage. So it has a chance to infect them with that and clear the poisoning from you. Now, I'm not sure if that's going to be enemy poisoning as well. But what this means is if you have like a perfect roll on one of these and you get hit by, I don't know, Uber Lilith smacking you in the face, unless this thing does like 10 times your maximum health, it's not going to kill you 1 second. And if it, like, let's say it hits you for exactly your maximum health, you have like 10,000 health, hits you for 10,000, it's going to take you 10 seconds to die from that. And during that time, you have a chance to clear it off of you. You can heal up from other sources. You can life steal. You can hit a potion. You can do all sorts of things, potentially live through this. I think that these are going to be absolutely beloved gloves by hardcore players. And it's going to be some funny deaths to see people rip to this when they don't realize they're poisoned. I'm definitely looking forward to these. I think it'll be pretty cool. Next up, we have Scorn the Earth Boots. So these are something we already kind of knew about in advance. We kind of got to see these a little bit in the preview event, but these have updated stats on them. And these have maximum evade charges and attacks reduce evade cooldown together, which I think is pretty nice. This also has resource generation, which is pretty big, damage, and cooldown reduction. This is like a lot of cooldown reduction. This is like probably a bug amount of cooldown reduction, because this could potentially by itself GA'd almost cap you. So if you have 45.8 times 1.5, this is baseline 68.7. I believe CDR cap is 75%, as we've seen in this expansion or the Infernal Horde season. So these boots almost like make it so like, why are you wearing a Harlequin crest? That's probably why neither of these hats here have cooldown reduction on them. But it's going to be pretty interesting to be able to do this. Now, Soar deals increased damage, and your evade is now Soar. So this just replaces those 1-to-1. And then on top of that, there is an aspect called the aspect of turbulence. So Sword casts vortex at its landing location and deals increased damage. So this allows you to, put this on like, anywhere that you put a utility aspect power. This allows you to just vacuum enemies into you all of the time. And if you have a barrier some way, the vortex does more damage and it knocks down enemies, which I think could be pretty cool. And I think these boots, especially on the ZDPS build that we were talking about before, it's gonna be pretty freaking popular. Just be able to basically spam vacuum enemies, knock them down non-stop, huge amount of cooldown, tons of resource generation if you need it. I don't know why you need it. You're probably just going to be spamming vacuum in anyways. And I just think it's going to be a really, really cool, very popular pair of boots. I want to note that they don't have any movement speed on them, but Spiritborn moves so quickly, you're probably not going to worry about that. Next up, we have the Jacinth Shell. So at first glance, I wasn't really all that impressed by this, but it does kind of have some insane stats on it. So first off, damage reduction while injured, 82.6%. The number seems very, very high, especially because, G8, that's going to bring you over 100% damage reduction while injured. I'm assuming that this has like diminishing returns as it goes up, so it's not actually going to make you like immune to damage while you're injured. It's going to give you endurance, which I believe is this one. So casting a defensive skill gives you more resources. And then on top of that, we have more damage, we have life, but then spending vigor heals you for 1 to 10% of your maximum life. And then every second, your active cooldowns now drain 10% of your maximum life to reduce their durations by 3 seconds. So at first glance, I was kind of like, this doesn't necessarily seem all that great. But I think if you combine this with a lot of your good cooldowns, it's going to be really ridiculous. So to give you an idea, we have counter attack, right? So counter attack, when you press the button, so when you just have it on the bar, it's going to give you 20% dodge chance, and you automatically retaliate against close enemies for 80% damage when you dodge their attacks. When you press the button, it's going to dodge all direct attacks for 2 seconds. This doesn't say gives you 100% dodge chance. It says you dodge all direct attacks. So you will not get hit by any attack that can be dodged by as direct attack, right? Damage over time is still going to hit you. But the charged cooldown of this is 13 seconds. But if I have, CDR cap, so I did not do this correctly, it's only going to have a 3-second cooldown. Well, Jacinth Shell is just going to slurp down 10% of your maximum life to give you that back during the 2-second duration. So every second it's going to suck down some of your life to reduce your cooldowns by 3 seconds. And so you'll be able to just keep counter attack up all of the time. I'm not really excited about spamming this button every 2 seconds, but it does seem like a pretty powerful combination, especially if you combine this with Craze of the Dead God. This might even be busted, because any direct damage you take turns into poison, and then if that poison puts you into damage reduction while injured, pretty much not taking damage anymore, and you can just pop it off of you whenever. I could definitely see a build out there where you want like a 1% roll, because you don't want to heal yourself too much and get out of the damage while injured. And I could also see a build where you want the 10% roll. And so I definitely think it's going to be pretty interesting for sure. These are basically the uniques that we have right now. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then all 6 rings. We might be missing one. I think all of the classes right now have 15. It's gonna be 16 going into 2.0, but I think the Spiritborn might be one unique behind. There's some other stuff in here that is just placeholder stuff. This is very clearly a Necromancer unique. We do have like a template unique. We have a Season 8 Spiritborn amulet. Some of these other ones seem kind of neat, but they're probably not Spiritborn exclusive. And, probably just something that like is still a work in process, because they don't have the same types of tags. Some of these could potentially just be cosmetics or some other stuff. And so none of these necessarily right now look like that they are anything that we need to worry about right off the bat. You know, some of these are like, this is a Necromancer body armor that's on a hat here, which is kind of strange. This is a Druid pair of gloves, that Necromancer body armor showing up again, and then a whole bunch of other stuff that doesn't really do anything. But yeah, that's pretty much the uniques that we have access to right now. I'm so excited about theory crafting these two particular hats, figuring some of these out. I'll probably put out some build guides for you guys to check out. I really do think the Spiritborn is like an onion. We just have layer after layer after layer after layer of layer. We're gonna have to discover and figure out all the fun stuff. I'm very much looking forward to getting my hands on it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I'll see you next time.